So today, it's my honor to have Dragutin Petkovic with us. Dragutin is a member of the editorial board of the IEEE Transactions on Technology and Society, among many other things. And I've just noticed he's posted onto the Tech Archive of IEEE a paper titled Gen AI, Our Tool or Our Future Master. And it piqued my attention for many reasons, particularly some of the remarks that have been made in the last sort of fortnight, in particular by the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, who said we have two major categories of risk when generative AI or AI today is misused, or it becomes smarter than us, this notion of super intelligence. And he warned us that about maybe 10 to 20% probability Gen AI or AI may wipe us off the face of the earth, according to him. Now, he is the Nobel laureate, uh, and we should heed his warnings. He was there as neural networks took off, and he believed in it and pushed it for so many years. But we have a guest who's also circumspect, a member of our editorial board, associate editor, who's had a lot to do with TTS for the last 2 years. So welcome, Dragutin Petkovic.
Thank you, Katina.
I want to start by asking you what grabbed your attention when you saw Geoffrey Hinton speak out and warn us about the future of AI recently.
So, yeah, I was preparing for my class, and my class is about AI ethics and trustworthiness, and wanted students to read something and comment on some opinion, and found this very recent interview. So, several things. First of all, he got Turing and Nobel Prize, and he did it. So he knows how it works. But he's one of the rare techies who takes the bigger picture of impact to society. As you know, I'm extremely concerned, to use the very mild word, with our techies where the only objective is profit and being first to the market, without complete disregard to impact to society. And this thing has huge impact. So the way he speaks, and he speaks well, and his allegories like be careful, if you find a cute cub and feed it, it might grow up and eat you. I mean, he speaks wonderfully, but he has the technical background to have credibility. And he grabbed my attention that he covered almost everything I was worried about. Then I thought I should also write my own views. I was thinking about it, but he just kind of added the push to actually support that. So that grabbed my attention. Somebody who is techie has a broad view of the concerns of society and has the courage to speak against the hype of the hypes. Hype of the hypes, I would say. So that really impressed me.
Yeah, I think we should spend a couple of minutes looking at his talk in a moment. He did give a 1.5 hour interview with the gentleman who runs a Diary of a CEO, and I think that's also worthwhile. But there are so many interviews coming out on the news and otherwise. We do need to heed his warnings. He and his students and postdocs were responsible. Many of them did enter companies like OpenAI or Google and decided to leave due to safety issues that they could foresee or risks that they weren't willing to live with as humans. And I think it's really important. People often point the finger and call people who raise warnings as alarmists, but there's no such
Yes.
thing in this area, especially when Geoffrey Hinton thinks the safest bet you have as a future employee is to become a plumber.
Yes.
Well, let's watch this.
Everything what your mother told you not to do, right?
That's right. That's right. And he said, if we want to know what it might feel like in the future, in terms of the super intelligence potentially coming through Gen AI, he said, ask a chicken what it feels like to be a chicken. And so he compares us as chickens in comparison to the
I
force of
heard
AI.
somebody said, I don't want to be washing dishes and AI to write poems. You know what I'm saying?
It's coming. It's already doing it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Let's watch what he had to say.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen. This year, the Nobel Committees in Physics and Chemistry have recognized the dramatic progress being made in a new form of artificial intelligence that uses artificial neural networks to learn how to solve difficult computational problems. This new form of AI excels at modeling human intuition rather than human reasoning, and it will enable us to create highly intelligent and knowledgeable assistants who will increase productivity in almost all industries. If the benefits of the increased productivity can be shared equally, it will be a wonderful advance for all humanity. Unfortunately, the rapid progress in AI comes with many short-term risks. It has already created divisive echo chambers by offering people content that makes them indignant. It is already being used by authoritarian governments for massive surveillance and by cybercriminals for phishing attacks. In the near future, AI may be used to create terrible new viruses and horrendous lethal weapons that decide by themselves who to kill or maim. All of these short-term risks require urgent and forceful attention from governments and international organizations. There is also a longer-term existential threat that will arise when we create digital beings that are more intelligent than ourselves. We have no idea whether we can stay in control, but we now have evidence that if they are created by companies motivated by short-term profits, our safety will not be the top priority. We urgently need research on how to prevent these new beings from wanting to take control. They are no longer science fiction. Thank you.
So there we have it, straight from the Nobel laureate winner speaking at the 2024 address. And I think we do need to take these things seriously. But back to you, Dragutin, for a moment. Tell us how you've gotten to where you are. You are at San Francisco State University now. What has been your background in the realm of AI and computing generally?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's and master's in the University of Belgrade. At that time, Yugoslavia, a beautiful country, which now is Serbia, another beautiful country, but not the big Yugoslavia. And I came to US in 81. But I'll tell you, my bachelor's degree was optical character recognition. Master's was interpretation of EKG signals, so a bit of primitive AI, and then X-ray chest analysis at UC Irvine, which is kind of computer vision and a bit of AI. So I was always interested in that. I was in IBM research many years. One of our big projects was query by image content, which kind of started the field of content-based retrieval, which is a bit of intelligence. Can you search images by drawing another image and asking for similar images? That was mid 90s. So now Google actually uses it pretty well. But then I also got interested in usability in IBM and when I was in VMware, how to make regular people use software, because it's this a bit of techie, shall we say, arrogance or something. How come people are so stupid they don't know how to use my software? But when you merge usability and AI, I then did some research in explainable AI and then realized, and that was pre-Gen AI time, that we are putting too much trust in AI. It has to be really verified and stuff like that. There is a lot of mistakes or seemingly correct answers by AI due to all the wrong reasons. And I started a certificate in ethical and explainable AI and at SF State. And then Gen AI hit. So even for me, who I knew general classic AI reasonably well pre Gen AI. And for my techie friends, this was like, wow, how come it can do all these things, you know? And then came all the other stuff of possible consequences. So I'm now, that's my kind of focus, you know, but I still keep this from usability work I did, a view of the people. And I'm sorry to say, not just executives from Palo Alto, California, but Joe Schmuck, who is age 50 and loses job within a month. And what does he do? You know? And
Yes.
so, and plus misuse and then being in education, it hit us harder than COVID, I would say. And I'm very involved in like how to develop strategies to actually use and prevent misuse of Gen AI. We need to do both things in academia now, right? Teach them
Yes.
how to use and then prevent misuse. So very impactful. So I'm really kind of into it now. I teach the class, certificate, try to, and then it's good to kind of write about it and add to the mix. I know I'm not the only skeptic, but I'll tell you, I have a lot of friends. Some of them, the higher they are in management, the more they look only at business aspects, how to save money with it. And I keep telling them, be careful, what will your kids do one day if they don't want to be plumbers? So,
Yes. Yes.
uh, and I feel the impact. My students cannot find job. They used to have multiple offers until early, now the whole year 2024, almost nothing
Yeah, that's
here.
a
And
complex issue,
yes.
especially
So
right in the
that's
heart of
my
Silicon
kind of
Valley.
through usability, classic AI, explainability, this thing happened, and then I see all the kind of good things and bad things with it.
Yeah, I've got peers in their 40s and 50s, in particular, that literally almost went out of business the next day. And they're struggling to pay rent, they're struggling to support themselves, and they're going from week to week, internationally, not just in Australia. And I have these discussions, but their only way to combat that immediately is to get on board the Gen AI and not to sort of oppose it. So they're reskilling themselves or upskilling themselves, I should say, and trying their best to keep pace, but still finding it difficult. Just because you're ahead a little bit of the curve with regards to the use and adoption of new generative AI tools, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to pay the rent. Because if that aspect can be automated, even the one who was automating can be replaced. So at what point up and down the chain?
Absolutely. And I have to inject the common counter argument. We had industrial revolution, we figured it out,
Mm-hmm.
will retrain and stuff. And I'm telling to my friends, baloney, this is the first technology
Mm-hmm.
that is encroaching upon knowledge base and white collar work. That's A.
Yes.
And B, it's happening in months, not tens of years like old industrial revolution. So it is not enough time to adapt.
Yes, and it's this
And I think
difference.
government better pay attention because bad things can happen if middle highly paid white collar workers start losing jobs. It's
Yes. Do you think uh, academia is at risk of losing jobs?
without calling names, if you talk to some AI executives, they mention it in an easy way, like another feature of Gen AI, it will replace the teachers. To which I tell them the following. So I'm the teacher, there's disclosure. You know, big baloney to you. Argument one, if you remember, massively online
Mm-hmm.
open courses,
Yes, the
total
MOOCs.
fiasco. You don't hear about it. San Jose State, next to me, tried to adopt it very aggressively. It was abysmal fiasco, 87% dropout. So education, it will help, but uh, kids still need to go to school and learn soft skills and discuss and stuff like that. Another argument is companies are asking people to come back to the office for a reason. They have to work together. How will kids work together if they are taught at home by Gen AI? And what we know, if kids are not motivated, those who actually need help are least
Mm,
motivated to do online education, so they do worse. So my conclusion is catastrophe. But teachers have to change and adapt.
yes,
But if they think they will replace teachers, good luck to them. I
yes.
don't want to be part of it, you know.
I'm in much agreement there. So how is this uh, generative AI different to what we might call traditional AI? You touched upon it. Uh, can you tell us more? I mean, what was traditional AI really
Yeah,
about
yeah,
when you
I
first started
actually
teaching it?
have a slide, Katina, in my class just to make a clear definition. People just gloss over it.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional AI, I call classic AI, is the one that simply makes decision from the number of categories like diseases, recognize faces. It does make decision on something that you use for diagnosis and stuff like that. Gen AI generates content, and that's like totally different ball game. So in generating, it can generate summaries, drafts, images, fake news, analysis, and stuff like that. So it's drastically different and uh, addresses many more applications than classical AI. Classical AI, in terms of its success, was limited to well-defined application, fingerprints, faces, EKG, and you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah,
silos.
yeah.
This thing is kind of everywhere, and it generates stuff which has raises all sorts of other issues. So much more impactful and consequential than classical AI.
Exactly. And I use Hinton's differentiator where he says, uh, the traditional AI was more about rules-based reasoning, whereas this is more, of course, at least modeled on the brain and how it functions according to Hinton in terms of neural nets and looking at how brain cells communicate with one another. Let's call them the synapses in the brain, but it's more about intuition, which I found very interesting in his description, the difference between reasoning in the traditional sense through rules-based logic, and then this today is more about going towards intuition, which is really where the threat is to the human, perhaps.
And by the fact that it generates content, it
Mm-hmm.
means it's not only helping physicians make decision, it's automating tech writing, code writing, and everything. And irony is that the very coders who are developing will be out coded by AI.
Yes,
But
yes,
if you talk to real techies, it generates malicious code, bad code, unmaintainable code, and it might be very difficult to maintain. But the problem, Katina, is the perception of executives who are optimizing next quarter. The first thing they see is opportunity to save. So some of them said, we don't hire new programmers in 2025. My question will be, what will be in 20 years? You didn't hire anybody, your programmers retired. You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
They
Yes,
don't care. They're paid well, and it doesn't feel like it's an issue now. But
yes.
no, some of us are supposed to raise that voice.
This is the issue when executives do look at benefits in terms of cost terms, economics, and financial terms. So they say revenue generation, or they say cost optimization, or the third thing is compliance. They have to comply, but we're not there at that point yet. You talked about AI ethics. If there were regulations that required compliance to a certain set of principles that companies had to prove were embedded in their practice, that then possibly we'd see some smarter executives uh, looking at long-term maintenance. I mean, the issue is maintenance, but then the issue is we're not even sure how generative AI or AI is calculating in terms of accuracy or other things based on hundreds of billions of parameters. So it's like one issue is maintenance in terms of any software, and then the other issue is we're not even sure if we can maintain this or if it's just going to become error-ridden. What's your take on the accuracy of AI?
Well, our esteemed marketing people in Gen AI came up with the word hallucination. In my village, it's called errors, you know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Noble thing. It actually doesn't have an index to real stuff. It has rules about text. So it
Mm,
can come up with new stuff that looks perfect. So I'll tell you, I have very particular opinions. You know, Mark Twain said, uh, half half truth is most cowardly of lies. It speaks with authority, but some things can be wrong, but it does not give you any confidence level of judgment as much as all the good, I would say, intelligence agency put some assessment and then probability of belief in that, you know,
yes.
with low confidence we say this. It doesn't, and it does produce. I mean, it does work okay, but it will skip some minor stuff. We find that by analyzing transcripts of our interviews, and then all the way to actually inventing wrong stuff. The problem then is, and I'm looking at papers, especially in legal. Stanford published very damning paper of catastrophe in legal profession. So Katina, you're a lawyer, you have to sign off on something. Your paralegal sent you the review.
Hmm.
It could have been done with Gen AI with totally bogus references. So now you have to actually go and check everything, which
Yes.
takes away from the savings of so tricky. The problem is it speaks with authority, but can produce total drama. Now, now, the smart companies came with sort of guard rails to align with human values. So we got a very nice guardrail to enforce diversity by a very big company, which produce Nazi soldiers as African Americans,
That's
and it
right.
was published, and withdrawn within day or two. Very how would I say,
Yeah.
disappointing example of putting rules. So the problem is opaque engine, you cannot control it because it has trillion knobs. Then you put some rules on top of it, you solve something, you break something else. Very tricky. And so we say now distrust and verify. The the problem is that people try that and start doing it less and less due to job pressure. So even
Yes.
I have a good paper by Microsoft fairly saying, you know, how to mitigate this issue of over reliance or Gen AI in your company, where okay, it seems to be working. I don't need to check everything and blah blah blah. Tricky. Uh,
Yeah, I want to say that's how we met you. Actually, you submitted a paper to the Transactions on Technology and Society on the topic of accuracy, which in the first year and a half has been so well cited, first couple of years, and so well downloaded and read. It's so important. I mean, there were companies that were starting to form just before generative AI hit the scene. I do remember consulting to one startup that said to me, look, we want to get in early with algorithmic justice, and we want to get in there so that we could give people confidence levels on this parameter is about, and this accuracy, and this is about 20 to 40% accuracy, whereas this is much higher. And if you change this, this is what will happen to your accuracy. And I thought, good luck. Because who can do that with any level of confidence today, given the hundreds of billions of parameters that these models are based on?
yes, with old rule-based systems, maybe you would have been able to do it, even random
Yes.
forest, which I know, but not with deep learning.
Yeah. So there is a lot to talk about the negatives. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to press you first. And you've mentioned some of these already. I mean, you're someone who teaches industry people, has a lot to do with professionals in all different stakeholder spaces. What are the benefits of the modern AI in your eyes?
Oh, including Gen AI, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And certainly, I will tell you, and the quoted benefits, increase in productivity, ability to. I sometimes can prepare my classes by conversing. I like actually Google RAG, Resource Augmented Generation, because it gives me links. Google AI overview for topics. Sometimes I use Gen AI, but you need some expertise to be able to interact with it. So certainly improve some things, helps people in writing and stuff. With all that comes also the dangers. But in industry, I heard recently very good talk, and then found this Rand Corporation report that 85% of Gen AI applications were abandoned. Either problems were too hard, they didn't show business value, they didn't have enough data. But the quoted benefit is, I think, increase in productivity, definitively. You can grab piece of code and people do it effectively, like spreadsheet processing. I interviewed somebody from HR in SF State. She said, would have taken me 3 days. I just asked
Mm.
ChatGPT, got the code to do some filtering. So there are benefits, but it's kind of tricky. With all these benefits comes the need to verify, and and I will tell you, in terms of return on investment, companies make money off of the fees of Gen AI, but there is little data to tell you that industry solved a particular problem with Gen AI and made a lot of money. But certainly, conversing chatbots and stuff, it's increasing productivity slash savings in human labor. Be, instead of human, you put chatbot and stuff. So this has been going on, but at this point, if you read reports from industry, this person said very well, the query from ChatGPT, show me a recipe for Serbian sarma. Okay, but nobody makes money of it. He wants to know, why is my product not selling?
Yeah.
And it cannot answer it yet because the data is in all kind of different formats within the company. So, but again, my students in software engineering class tell me, I ask them to I actually ask them to use GenAI for assignments. I don't grade it, but they have to give self-assessment how useful it was and rated. And in a lot of things, it was rated 4 out of 5, quite useful as a tool. So
Yes.
that's I think is going to be there. But in doing that, remember, instead of hiring young intern, you actually work with ChatGPT as kind of pair programming. So with it comes, it's actually so good with some things that perception is you don't need more people. So
Humans.
it's tricky. But as far as I understand, I'm not following that very closely. The VC community in US is starting to ask, where is our return on investment?
Oh, look, I've got MBA
The
students.
startups are not doing great in
No.
AI. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No,
that's
no,
what
no. I
I'm
think you're
understanding.
100% right. And even in big consulting companies, don't want to name any. There aren't that many anyway these days, but my MBA students are basically being pressed to come up with generative AI products and services that do generate a return on investment, and they're struggling, absolutely struggling to prove that they are. As you said, we could have products and services that look more, uh, that they can replace people and they're higher in productivity, but there's the overhead, and people don't talk about the overhead, which you called verification. Um, but beyond that, it's even uh, we just seem to be throwing more of less quality at people. And the perception, I think, that it is generating a return on investment bugs me. Many times when I personally, as a consumer interact with chatbots online, and I think, really, the chatbot research is showing that the user experience and usability is better with a chatbot. I mean, I remember at one stage having to say, look, get me a human. Because I know at one point, you reach a ceiling after a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And usually, if you don't get your answer within the first query, you're going to be in a revolving door where it's just going to keep spitting back at you every 5 minutes the same response. And so sometimes I press to see how far I'll go. But dear oh dear, what we're seeing is chatbots that really don't work. They're hopeless. They waste half an hour of your time without a resolution. And we're supposed to be believing the idea as consumers that chatbots are better for us, and people prefer chatbots than they do humans. Well, it depends whether you've trained the humans in the organization to do what they're supposed to do in a help desk capacity. And many organizations are opting for chatbots that don't work, and all it does is increase the frustration of consumers or citizens if it's a government platform. But
Do you remember Microsoft Bob? A little clip that would give you
yes,
advice. It was annoyingly
yes,
annoying, and they withdrew it quickly. Of course, it didn't have this sophistication, but also this thing is much better, but maybe not there yet. But the point is correct. Remember, spreadsheet made a
yeah,
revolution. It was a clear application for which you should buy PC and do it.
mm,
This is like a bit better than humans, but maybe not better. So yeah, I mean, I hear OpenAI is doing well and others by getting fee for using it, but in my opinion, Meta and Google are making money anyway, but not on AI specifically. So if you're a
yeah,
startup, right, to just do AI application, good luck. Because
yeah.
I think they're not doing great.
That they will find some, I worked in the telecommunications industry, and we thought unified messaging was great. This conversion between text to speech, speech to facsimile if you needed to, depending on the context, whatever you wanted to do in unified messaging. You'd get a message in one form factor and change it and convert it to another, and then keep the data flowing in the organization. So I think generative AI is great for transcription, it's great for synthesis, it's great for potentially categorizing, although I do find that if our research students are using generative AI for synthesis and also for categorization, things that were happening before manually, then they're losing that expertise. And I don't mean the expertise of categorization, I mean the expertise of knowing how to uh, categorize data, right? And that is something about building expertise. So if you're handing that off, and I often hear these days people wanting to do grants and just farm off the interviewing, or actually the actual question and answer part of the interviewing, not just the transcription part, but farm off the whole interviewing process. And I think, but then what have you gained? Absolutely nothing. Just you're a good proposal writer, and you farm off every element of the grant. What are you learning? Nothing.
Okay, where's the so two problems with that. First of all, de-skilling of population. Just watch the movie Idiocracy. It's
Mm,
hilarious movie. Everybody becomes dumb. You know what I'm saying.
yeah.
But number two, a rise of mediocrity.
Mm,
Remember, if you write proposal with ChatGPT, so can I.
yes,
So ours will be similar. Who will win? And all of this will go back to indexing engine, which will index of its own content.
I
It
know.
called large language model collapse, which people don't discuss much. But there was a paper from Stanford Berkeley of decreasing accuracy of new models.
Exactly.
So, and your email will look like total vanilla email. And then let's not talk even about agentic AI. Your agent talks to my agent, and we don't even know each other. And only, I have to say, sorry, only rather myopic techies can be excited about this. You have to
Mm,
be sorry. I have tenure. I can tell you what I think. You have to be totally devoid of any humanity or social skills if you think
mm.
it's great that your agent talks to my agent instead of you and I talking in person.
Yeah,
That's what they're so excited because GWiz, it's a great, cool software, right?
yeah, and I think, we've always talked about hypervalence, but with my husband MG Michael, but yeah, the agentic AI will mean that we'll all have a box just about here. You'll have a box. Your EKG work, it might come back into fashion, or the or the EEG work. So basically, a box here, a box there, and we communicate through the boxes, implants in our brains, and hey, we're living, aren't we? We can spend time at the beach while our agentic systems are communicating. Well, it does get kind of fuzzy at that point, and just to bring it back to a little bit more seriousness, although I know what you're talking about is very serious, Dragutin, I did say at a recent academic review that our short-term gain is here for a very little time with generative AI. As you said, if people are just uh, using generative AI to output based on current data, and then that new data is being fed to existing models to train it, then we start to get quite dumb over time. And I do think people can't see that, but I don't know why they can't see that. So if everybody's using generative AI this year for every task, and generative AI relies on the existing data sets to create outcomes to new queries, then all we're doing is, over time, it just is this
And
this
there is no
funnel going down.
differentiation. And there is one thing, if we ever talk to technicals, remind me, I don't know if you want to talk about that, curse of dimensionality. This is
Mm,
the old school of AI and statistics that is kind of, there's only one paper from Google Research, I think, that when these things scale, they start losing. The math doesn't work. Everything is similar to everything when you
exactly.
have trillions of parameters. And that could be the explanation of
Mm,
these models losing accuracy. It's a known term to all the information theory people, kind of not mentioned today because we have all this computing power, right? We
yes.
we have more and more layers, but at some point the complexity becomes problem in itself.
So we talked briefly about benefits. Okay, let's just say we get it. We know where it can work. We can see for certain tasks that it can increase productivity. We question this notion of return on investment. We also question usability with it with respect to lots of different aspects in verticals, advantages. In your new article on Tech Archive in IEEE, you mentioned a lot of these disadvantages and negative externalities. Can you talk to us about some of them?
Yeah, I have it here just so I don't forget.
Yeah,
Let me tell you some of my, of course, impact to job market, loss of skills, um, over reliance. They're just some of them. One of them is what happens with human intellectual property. As you
hmm
know, they're hungry for data. Given complexity of their system, I think they need about 10 or 100 times more data for this high dimensional engine of deep learning they use to start actually learning. So they're pushing the government in US to allow them to use all the copyrighted content, which is end of creative community, right? So
yeah,
these are the issues. Another big thing for me is uh, things that people don't even think, which is use of energy, water, and environment. This thing is a huge energy hog, and Meta is just these big companies are buying production of nuclear power plants and stuff. It uses water for cooling of the centers and stuff like that. Another to me is uh, concentration of all the knowledge in few companies, controlled by government or not, and couple that with a low motivation to learn anything because it's all available through Gen AI, right? Scary proposition in the following. First of all, control of population and propaganda through, only few people control the engine, subject to cyber attack and other attacks. So nobody even knows how to do spreadsheet anymore, right? Because it's all
yeah.
Gen AI. The service is out, you are toasted. You know,
hmm
the human, when you look at, military safety systems. It's always redundancy, decentralization. This thing is being centralized in few language models. Uh, Another thing that worries me is the bias in this model. Uh, 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 and it's proven that they're biased politically, morally, and stuff. And people here in Silicon Valley talk about alignment with human values. Whose human values? Of Bay Area? Well,
Yes.
India has different one, Australia has different, China has different. How do you reconcile that? You know what I'm saying? So these are some of the things, the fake stuff, loss of trust in chatbots or anything you read. Um, I'll tell you cases. My wife often tells me, "Look what I found on the internet. Can you believe it?" So I Google. It doesn't exist in news, but the
Yeah.
video is quite convincing. It's getting better and better, and we'll never catch the tools to detect use of AI. They will always be behind, and so it might devaluate the trust in digital information altogether. It's already happening. People like turn off. So these are a lot of dangers. The good things are there. Another danger is enrollments in US universities are down, partially due to demographics and cost, partially due to belief that going to vocational school is better. And vocational schools are increasing enrollment. Computer science is rapidly losing enrollment the last 2 years,
Yeah.
5-10% a year or something. So these are some of the dangers. But for me, the ultimate danger is when you not only use the information you get from Gen AI, but you connect it with agents that can actually do something from that information. Agentic systems, which my techie friends proudly run the workshops of a new frontier of agentic systems. And to me, that's kind of the ultimate thing. Because the first thing our esteemed MBAs will do, sorry to say, is fire half of the staff managing nuclear power plant and put some agent in control of it. Think of hallucinations and agents or cyber attack and agents and blah, blah, blah. To me, that is, I think Hinton mentions that too. The
Yes,
agentic AI,
he does.
because it has action. And you think I'm dreaming? I think I told you, I think I copied you that um, agent of Claude, I think, threatened to blackmail the staff because it read their email when they were discussing turning off the service by actually
Yes.
sending fake email about inappropriate affairs at work to some local newspapers and stuff. Quite smart. It's simply optimizing the reinforcement learning gain function, but it's not good, and it's
Yeah,
happening today.
yeah, I mean that's I think the predicament of Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when Dave said, you know,
Sorry, what did you say? Sorry, I don't think I will be able to do that, right?
yeah,
The how.
what are you doing, Dave? This is highly inappropriate.
By
Um,
the way, Katina, do you know where the name HAL comes?
Go ahead. Something
Memory
legacy.
foam.
Yeah,
IBM was the absolute ruler at that time. In Alphabet, if you go one step back on IBM, you get HAL.
HAL. Yes, there you
Somebody
go.
told me that. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one. Um, so all of these things you mentioned, I mean, it is extremely serious. You've identified them very quickly as almost bullet points. They are discussed in more detail in your, I think it's a 10-pager or thereabouts
First
article.
opening, yeah.
Okay. And I encourage people to read it because you do provide support for your argument. It's a qualitative paper, but you point to also scientific papers, of course, and papers that you've read widely. Um, why did you feel the need to write it? What was that
All of the
last?
above. I mean, my observe. I'll tell you, reading the news. I mean, a lot of my lecture on AI ethics is news items because by the time you publish the paper to review process, something else happens. It all comes up. Claude is trying to blackmail the people, and it's in the news. And also, me knowing a little bit, discussing at my school how do we adopt Gen AI, how do we do assessment of learning in the presence of Gen AI, and my love for sci-fi movies, which I
Hmm.
thought were sci-fi, and they're not anymore. It's exactly going that way. So, and just concern for humanity, not just, oh, gee whiz, it's cool. Let me play with this and make some money. I'm looking at my kids and the future and stuff. So, um, but I think these days it's enough to read news, including Professor Hinton's interview, and be clear about it, and also talk to your friends. I'll tell you, most of my friends, techies of my age, the statement is, I'm glad I'm retiring,
Yeah, I know.
which is not good for the future.
Yeah. So
But
in
then
the
I'm trying to do education and push back, not just kind of, and also I use it, appropriately, hopefully,
yes.
but trying to push back and publish and raise some awareness of it.
Yes. I mean, you can't be no one can point the finger at you and say you're a naysayer in the sense of you never used generative AI, and you were in the AI space. You are in the AI space.
And
You're in
I'm
the
using it
heart.
tonight.
That's
I'm
right. And many of your students are in
By
business
by the
already.
way, Katina, on a minor thing, speaking
Yeah.
of education, actually, but very new. Remember, all the education community agreed we need to establish policy on use of Gen AI in our classes.
Hmm.
A few weeks ago, a student at Northwestern asked the school to return the fee because the teacher was using Gen AI in the wrong way, didn't check anything. So I have a slide now, my policy in using Gen AI in the class. I
Yeah.
owe it to students to know that, I'm not going to grade their exams with Gen AI and stuff.
Yes.
So there is some concrete action we have to do to kind of do it even in education, and disclosure. I reviewed book proposals for Elsevier, 2 pages. There was
Hmm.
a big requirement: do not use Gen AI in this review because of
Yeah.
confidentiality and stuff like that. So I think people will hopefully fight back with some kind of uh,
Balance
um,
measure.
balance measure. Yes.
Yeah. Although we're seeing universities in some way, I mean, the universities such as the University of Sydney are renowned for pushing the use of generative AI within their cohorts. All their schools, they have a system called Cogniti. Other universities are saying no, you are not allowed to use generative AI to do your assessment. There are different integrity groups forming to create school policies versus university policies. Then we have policies for publication, of course, as you mentioned. I can see the potential benefit, but also as that student who came up at Northwestern University saying, "Hey, give me my feedback because you used ChatGPT to give me feedback for my assignment where I couldn't use ChatGPT." How ridiculous is
Oh,
that?
yes, yes.
So there are all these anomalous cases in education. But in the paper, I mean, you bring an important point. We're an interdisciplinary journal at the Transactions. uh, we are not homogenized in a way that says, or homogeneous, I'm just an academic, or I'm just a citizen when I write, or I'm just a practitioner from industry or a regulator. What voice is the article written in? Do you have your academic hat on, a recruitment hat on, thinking about your students, a parent's hats or grandparents' hats, a concerned citizen hat? What voice?
Actually, believe it or not, all of the above. Precisely all of the above. Certainly, ac academic in terms of, I understand technology a little bit,
Hmm.
and I'm a teacher, right? But I wrote the paper how to use and not use Gen AI in education. this paper is, I think, general both for practitioner and for people in social science and even maybe parents to read. So more than one hat for sure.
Do you think that's the problem today with academics who don't want to be wearing multiple hats, or don't want to investigate issues from different perspectives and different stakeholders because they're academics or their industry, and we seem to silo ourselves within a context. So as an academic, if I'm in STEM, I surely can't say anything negative about generative AI because I'm a STEM professional in an academic setting. Or if I'm a MBA working for one of the big four consulting companies, surely I can't say anything terrible about Gen AI because I'm in the business of making money off generative AI. Do you think this is one of the issues, this lack of inter or transdisciplinarity?
Well, remember, this is the issue all the time. We have people publish in their own silos and talk to their own people in the conference. So I think it's there, it's problematic, it will stay. But hopefully, somebody in government, somebody in academia can run more multidisciplinary workshops and this stuff. But people are generally tied to their silos in academia. Very few at the level of Hinton who can look broadly. That's why we started, I have to say proudly, one of the first in the country certificate in ethical AI. Wall Street called us. Why? When they call you, that's something. Because it was School of Philosophy, Business, and Computer Science together.
Yeah.
Which is unique. I look at some others, it's more like about more algorithms, not like the whole thing. I wish we had School of Law. That would be the fourth component. So definitely that's needed. And I think your journal is the right venue to encourage that. Really, because others are, deeply into their own silos, and maybe that's good. You need that, but you need some horizontal look and kind of integrate that together for sure.
Can I ask you on the ethical AI side and the students who are graduating with a certificate in that space? Again, I go back to peers who have been trying to create startups in the operationalization of ethics within STEM field broadly, within business broadly, but they're finding it very hard to find clients. No one wants to pay for this kind of ethical AI activity, and many of these startups are just people are spending every last drop of sweat trying to launch them. They're going nowhere. What's happening here? Who is using the ethical AI certificate? How could you point to some directions?
You make a point. It's all nice when the company makes money. The moment they don't make money, forget ethics, just get the bottom line. It's maybe the consequence of success of capitalism and profit. I got an interview from economists, very good person interviewed me. Last question was kind of what you ask. Are your students going to be more ethical in the companies having your certificate? I say my certificate, our certificate helps them open their eyes, give them some tools without a real push, either legal or regulatory, or people, as Hinton said, people decide not to use something, companies will not move. That's why, when I was a little kid in then Yugoslavia, which was a great country, but we all admire US, but then we say, oh, somebody sued this big company for $1 billion. This is idiotic. It's stupid. Now I see that's the only way. So I hope the US legal system would put some, in the lack of regulation, some kind of balance between, because companies will not move until there's a legal remedy or bottom line stuff. So, but our hope is that through education, we educate people. Like, for example, how will our senators vote some regulatory stuff? I mean, in California, Governor Newsom, I think rightfully so, uh, vetoed a legislation maybe last year or recently, voted by California Congress on regulation uh, because it was really wrong. It just looked at the size of the model and megaflops used to train it. So, but it's so complicated. How do you even regulate something that's complicated and by the time you learn it, they invent something else? So, education is important, but the companies themselves I think are still driven by profit in US, and it will be very hard. And the climate is such to regulate less. But I think then the legal system hopefully can protect the IP and little Joe Schmuck on the street from your credit has been denied. We cannot tell you why. That was one of my driving case for explainable AI before Gen AI. Your
Yes.
credit has been denied. I use deep learning. It's unexplainable, but it's certified software. I cannot tell you, and you don't have a credit. Well, legally, you're supposed to explain me that. So,
Yes.
based on my race and something, how do I know? So it's a tricky battle. I think Hinton said in interview, it's at the end the people have to
Hmm.
but I think people through their representatives can vote for some effective regulation. I have to put a caveat. EU is overregulated. We know that. Draghi's report, Mario Draghi, who is really fantastic, said they really have to cut bureaucracy and red tape. And they have this EU AI Act, which remains to be seen how effective it is. But they don't have any player in AI. You know what I'm saying? Because they're overregulated. That's one extreme. Wild West is too dangerous, in my opinion. Should be some effective middle ground. Easier said than done. But I speak in the paper, if you don't mind. I think it's very important comment that I discussed with some friends. People always think about creating a new super agencies for AI regulation. I
Mm.
think that's absolutely wrong. It's extra bureaucracy and it's not going to fly in US for good
Yes.
reason. But we do have FDA, we have a National Transportation Safety Board, we have FAA, we have UL labs for regulating electrical stuff. Incorporate some AI regulation appropriate for their own business to
Hmm.
regulate products. That would be the way, in my opinion, not creating some kind of bureaucracy like EU Act, which remains to be seen how effective it is.
Interesting. While I was in France last month, or earlier this month actually, there were some implementation problems with the EU AI Act going live, and they were requesting more time to provide organizations more time to come into compliance because you just can't uh, create such a system at large to regulate and then not inform organizations how to. So the implementation
Well,
was widely reported as slowing down. The other thing we're seeing as well is that the Fundamental Rights Impact Assessment section of the EU AI Act is exempting things like military operations. So, you know, go ahead and use AI any way you wish, as you said before, with nuclear or otherwise.
well,
Surveillance, for instance,
I have certain
reconnaissance.
view of these bureaucrats. It's all nice saying in headquarters of Brussels, well dressed, drinking, eating great food, and then when it comes to something real, they just put exceptions.
Mm,
But their stuff, remember, EU Act has some good things saying we should regulate only mission critical applications based on risk. But a lot of that is, not easy to numerically regulate. It's a judgment of people, which means they would have to hire a lot of lawyers. They would generate papers. They would probably use Gen AI to do it. And there you go. But my discussion with my European friends is, yes, you have all these noble ideas, but what have you invented last 50 years?
yeah.
That's the claim. And on top of that, there is now is even like Cold War in AI between superpowers of so if I regulate, I'm going to be left in the dust.
Yes,
know,
and I think that's fair. I mean, there have been academics who have called AI the fourth offset, the first being the nuclear bomb, of course, but they've said, it is exactly as you say. It's who will use AI in a way that will give them the edge in so many different ways, whether it's spying, gathering intelligence on other enemy states, whether it's looking at behaviors of humans and how they do things. I mean, we have these things called social media. I often think these are the applications that were not developed by private organizations, but very clever government intelligence people who just gave the intellect to what we call private companies. But you have people spilling their guts online, and this data is public. People may not realize that it is, but it is in most of the cases, unless your privacy settings are so tight that you can't even receive messages at times. They're so tight. So we are somehow sleepwalking into this kind of future. And I wanted to ask you, well, what happens now? You've talked to us about regulation and using, in your eyes, the existing associations that are the regulators to regulate AI in a vertical context, in an application-specific context. But okay, let's say people are still so engrossed in their messaging and their Facebook and their Instagram and their TikTok that they can't see where this is going. Well, where is this going, according to you and your paper, Dragutin? And what should happen next?
I don't know. Uh, Companies are trying to make these systems more available, easier to use, and uh, you go to restaurants today, everybody's looking at these stupid phones and stuff, right? Um, I don't know. I have some optimistic scenarios, more like negative scenarios of people spending more time and getting lonelier, more isolated. It's been proven, depression correlates with how many hours you spend on social networks and stuff. Tricky. I think education, how to use and how not to use it, is really important. And as you
Mm,
know, some schools are now forbidding devices and stuff like that. So I think education is one thing that will hopefully help. But the business pressure and these companies are really skilled in distributing technology. The rate of adoption of Gen AI and Open AI is two orders of magnitude faster than Instagram. So it's really tricky. Well, where is it going? Hopefully, some mild regulations are one component. Another component to help is education. The third one is legal system. Some calamity will happen and they should sue their pants off.
mm.
That's how things are done in US. Um, Role of government may be into breaking companies, avoiding monopolies, stuff like that. I don't know. It's tricky because this is also, as you say, a useful tool for you know getting idea what population is doing, right? So
That's the number one use, according to Hinton, is the surveillance aspect.
yes,
Of course, the
tricky.
cyber attacks, as you mentioned, but the surveillance aspect.
Yes, three. You know, all these, sci-fi movies that we watch are becoming more realistic, dystopian future and stuff. I hate to be negative, but my take is go to the beach, turn off the phone, get some nice bottle of wine, some food, and watch the waves, and
And
blip
live.
out of the others because but it's very seductive, And what I'm afraid is they will focus on kids and make them more reliant. You and I were born after that, but I
Yes.
see, people pushing stroller and kids are just doing the devices. Once you're on device, you get TikTok and
Yes.
all this, and TikTok is connected to Gen AI and they know everything. And then I asked my students in software engineering, hey guys, what do you think about cashless society? Professor, wonderful, such a cool software. I say, you guys are a bunch of naive, you know what? You watch the movies? Then I go on the table and write them a simple pseudo code. Read Dragutin's email. If Dragutin criticizes government, turn off his credit card. And then what? I cannot buy a piece of bread because there is no cash in the. So the kids are in US, they're a bit spoiled with good government and history, and they don't think in this negative way.
Yes, the critical thinking skills are certainly an area of education that
Oh,
mustn't
yes.
diminish.
Oh,
Mustn't diminish.
yes, definitely.
And having kids uh, from the early 2000s onwards, I noticed that, of course, if you do give some kind of frame or picture, a child would try to
Yes.
swipe the physical artifact as if it is a phone. But more seriously now, just a couple of days ago, I was interviewed regarding the death of one young man overseas and this notion of companion bots. We have researched companion bots for seniors who may be living with certain conditions or feeling quite lonely, and quite startling results from those studies that were conducted at ASU from the perspective that many of the seniors or older adults actually enjoyed interacting with bots, and some of them even shared that they shared things with the bots they had never shared with other human beings, traumatic episodes, and much more. But we go back to children in particular and this notion of companionship and the fact that we live in a society together and we have to go to work so that we can do things together. And of course, the death of a young man who was told to end his life by a bot, and he followed suit
Was
through.
that in Bay Area?
It was the character AI
No, no,
example
but where did it case
in
happen?
the US. In the
Yeah, I
US,
know it here, close to
yeah,
me.
y- and
I it's terrible. It's
eh,
terrible.
yes. So, uh, of course, we can see possibly benefits of the use of bots or chatbots with children who may be living with some uh, cognitive conditions, uh, but in the majority of cases, teaching children that chatbots are friends is problematic to me, just per se. Friends are those that are embodied, they're human. My concern
Absolutely.
is that there is no awareness at the moment, at least the early childhood age, of a differentiation between a picture that is a moving picture that has been embodied with some kind of characteristic, maybe a character like Mickey Mouse being your friend. I think it's coming closer, and I'm not being alarmist as a parent now of teenagers, but I do see it's already causing some waves in children.
Absolutely. And I've been to AAAI symposium organized always by friends from Japan, very good, well-being and AI. There were some interesting experiments in fine-tuning chatbot to avoid this,
Mm-hmm.
fine tuning with some rules. Tricky area, especially for kids. Anecdotally, I think I read somewhere that Sam Altman decided to call it ChatGPT and not the name to avoid people attachment. But people do get attached because they're shy to talk. But tricky thing, and I think it has to be watched. What's worrisome is that without naming the companies, when they were audited, it was found that they paid for research that showed that their software is harmful to kids and they still pushed it. So, and pharma companies push the pills with
Yes.
addictive that's industry. So I know the lawsuit has been going on with this,
Yes.
and let's see if that changes the environment. I will tell you also that in our certificate, I insisted that students write 10, 15-page self-reflection report or analysis, not just get 3 courses. And one student did a study of chatbots. Of course, dating chatbots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or relationship advice. They all at the end switch to, you know what, in order to make money. It just deteriorated very quickly into inappropriate territory. So push to make money at the end forces you to do things that are more addictive and stuff like that. So it's tricky. Parents should watch, I think, and I think schools should, you know, like forbid these devices in school, at least some free time and stuff like that. It's definitely an issue, especially with young people. But my fear is that industry also knows that if you hook them early on, you get new customers. The smoke industry did it, you know, especially with teenage girls, you know, the studies, right?
Yes, yes.
So I'm not naive, you know, I have nothing against industry and profit, but there is a territory where it becomes dangerous if it's only profit.
I think that's a great place to close off on. I think the warning for me to others who are using GPTs every morning when they wake up for at least half an hour discussing the problems of the day is uh, be careful what kind of advice you're receiving from these bots, remembering that they're based on both the worst and best reflections of humanity in what has been written openly on the internet and on different uh, applications. That the advice is not medical advice and not health and well-being certified advice, that it is simply grabbing stuff from the internet and giving back what it thinks, however it has been formed and formulated its advice back to you. I would say to those people, you should be seeking medical attention that is certified and regulated rather than relying on bots. But increasingly, people are using these GPTs as therapeutic outlets. The other thing is on the question of privacy. We've mentioned surveillance, but not privacy specifically. I think everything you're pointing to actually has that privacy element. Uh, be careful what you write publicly. Be careful what you write anywhere, actually, whether you think it's public or private, because that data may be used as well, but also your data may be used in ways that you never thought possible to begin with. I think the environmental aspect that you stressed highly about the energy and water usage is alarming. Uh, the growth is exponential at the moment, if not higher. And as we've said, the uptake has been greater than anything else we've seen before, both in applications and hardware sense. There are many other examples. You mentioned the difference between what companies call hallucinations and what we call errors in your vocabulary, and the discernment that we're losing in making decisions based on situations, whatever that is. So I think our situational awareness is also being affected. And when that goes, it's an embodied awareness. When that goes, we have difficulty in making decisions per se, given new choices perhaps into the future and new avenues we might explore. So with all of that, I hope we do listen. I heed your warnings. I look forward to reading your paper, this version, on Tech Archive, and I hope to see it down the track published somewhere. I know I'm vying for it through our review system, so we'll see how that goes. But anything else you want to say before we end this interview, Dragutin?
Oh, I want to thank you and the journal. It's a good venue. Hopefully, it will happen as historically happens that humanity finds the way. But as you know, Bill Gates rightfully said, we regulated new nuclear industry, right? So hopefully, this is different, but hopefully we can find our ways. But we have to think about humanity, our children, and environment we live in, both physical and you know mental. And I would say distrust and verify. So should be common. And then you find out that even some I have to say, government documents posted on the internet had non-existing resources.
Yeah. Well,
Distrust and verify. So
distrust and verify. I think they will be lines in a new sci-fi, perhaps utopian, if they have anything to you. They often do consult Silicon Valley profs, these futuristic filmmakers. So maybe you're the beginning of the next movie, which is the utopian distrust and verify,
I have a lot of
coming
good
to your cinema
scenarios
soon.
for you. I know, I know. I know, but I have to tell you, we are recently watching number of movies. I think the scenarios are starting to be written by Gen AI.
I think
They're
so too.
so predictive. The former CIA agent on retirement gets called for the last task, and the agency is against him. He's a raw guy, and here at the end, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all the same. This is rise of mediocrity. So we
Yeah.
need to maybe put like Adobe saying this content has not been generated by Gen AI. This movie script, it's like boring. We start watching old crime movies, 80s and 90s. They're much better.
Well, I've turned to Bollywood because Bollywoods generally have a happy ending. So with
Yeah.
that one, Dragutin, let's hope for the happy ending. And I
Thank
love
you.
your
Thank
take on
you.
life. I love your take as an academic. You're the whole person, my friend. And I look forward to many more interviews and many more readings of your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.